Hi everyone, welcome back to Lulumath. This video is on solving word problems with linear equations, and specifically we're going to be looking at geometry problems. So you need to know how to solve multi-step equations. We have an explanation on how to solve word problems, general word problems, and we also have a video on translating verbal expressions into mathematical or algebraic expressions or equations. So if you feel like you need a refresher on any of these topics, please feel free to check them out at lulumath.com or the Lulumath YouTube channel. And just a quick note too is that we have other word problems that have specific content if you want to look at some other examples of word problems as well. When we did the general video on solving word problems, there's a bit of a process that I like to follow in order to be able to really attack these word problems and problem solve and critically think as I'm going through my solution of these problems. So I'm going to follow that process again as I model for you how I would solve these types of questions. So the first thing I would always do whenever I have a word problem is I would always identify my key information. So I'm going to highlight that key information as I read through this problem. So it tells us that Maya wants to fence in a backyard with 55 meters of fencing, and the width must be 5 less than 3 times the length, and that's the width, and that's really important, okay? So I've identified my key information. Then I'm gonna identify what I wanna know, and what I wanna know is the area of this backyard. Then I would draw a picture if necessary, and this is a perfect example where drawing a picture will really help me to be able to properly set up this problem and properly solve this type of a question. But I'm gonna write my specific let statements as I draw my picture. These two kind of go hand in hand, and as we do this, we always wanna ask ourselves 2 questions. I want to ask myself, how many things don't I know? And what is everything based on? So let's draw a picture of what's going on here. So we have our house and we have our backyard, and it's going to get fenced in. And we know that the width must be 5 less than 3 times the length. That's what it tells us here. And again, we're told that the width must be 5 less than 3 times the length. So at this point, I'm going to ask myself, how many things don't I know? I don't know the length and I don't know the width. But what is everything based on? Well, it tells us the width must be 5 less than 3 times the length, which means I have to know the length first before I can even find the width. So I'm going to write 2 let statements because I don't know 2 things. And my first one is going to be based on the length because I need the length first. And if I don't know the length, I'll just call it X. And I'm going to label that into my picture. So I know this is the length and this is the length. So those are X's. I also don't know the width. But I do know that the width must be 5 less than 3 times the length. So I'm going to write 3 times the length, which is this X here. And then I'm going to do 5 less than that. And remember, we always do the minus 5 at the end. So if you need a refresher on why that is, make sure you check out the video on translating verbal expressions. And since this section right here represents the width, I'm going to call this 3x minus 5. And this is where I'm going to start to write my equation. And I know that I'm going to need 55 meters of fencing along my backyard. So this X and this X, as well as this 3x minus 5 altogether should be 55 meters of fencing. So let's write this out. So I'm going to take this side, this X, and I'm going to add this side, this next X, and I'm going to add this 3x minus 5, and that should altogether equal this 55 that we know is the total amount of fencing that I need. Now I need to solve my equation. So let's go ahead and do that. 1x plus 1x plus 3x is 5x. And then I'm going to copy down this minus 5, and it's going to equal 55. Add the 5 to both sides. I get 5x equals 60. Divide by 5, and I get x equals 12. So I've solved my equation. Now I need to answer the question. And the question is asking me to determine the area of the backyard. Well, to find area, I have to do the length multiplied by the width. And I don't know the length and I don't know the width. However, I do know what x is, so I can actually solve for the length and the width. So if x represents the length and x is equal to 12, then we know that the length is equal to 12 meters. And if the width is 3x minus 5, I can do 3 times 12 because x is 12, and then minus 5, and that's going to give me the width. And 3 times 12 is 36, and 36 minus 5 is 31. So these are 2 key pieces of information that are going to help us out here. So to find this area, I can take my length, which is this 12 meters, and I can take this width, which is 31, and I can multiply them together. And when I multiply 12 by 31, I get 372. So my area is 372 meters squared. So I've answered my question. But the last thing I'm going to do is ask myself if my answer makes sense. Does it make sense that I could have 12 meters as my length and 31 meters as my width? Well, it does, because 12 plus 31 adds up to 55, and it's a feasible value. It's a number that actually makes sense. So this does make sense. So we just write our therefore statement. The area of the backyard is 372 square meters, and we are all set with this question. Okay, in our next example, the first thing I would do is identify any key information that's going to help me out. So as I read through this, I'm told that the shaded area of the figure shown is 320 centimeters squared. Key information, awesome. Then I'm going to identify what I want to know. And I want to know the dimensions of the outside rectangle. And the dimensions mean the length and the width. Now we're at a point where we would draw a picture if necessary and write specific let statements. Again, these tend to go hand in hand. But the nice thing about this problem is that we have our picture here. And we don't even need to write let statements because our variables are defined for us. We know how big the length and the width are of our outside rectangle as well as our inside square. So we can actually skip those two steps. So now I'm going to write my equation, and my equation is based on the information that's given to me. And I am told that the shaded area, so just what I have here, is equal to 320 square centimeters. Well, the only way I can figure out the shaded area is by finding the area of the outside rectangle and then take the area of the inside square and subtract them. So the area of the outside rectangle is equal to 7x multiplied by 3x. And 7x times 3x is 21x squared. And don't forget that it is x squared because x times x is x to the power of 2. We always add our exponents whenever we're multiplying. And the area of the inside square is going to be equal to x times x, which is just simply x squared. And I want to subtract these two areas. So I'm going to take 21x squared, and then I'm going to subtract this x squared. And we know that that should equal this 320 that we're told. Whatever the full area is, when I take away the area of the square, whatever's left over is the shaded area. So now I need to solve my equation. Well, here I have like terms. So if I have 21x squared and I take away 1x squared, then here I have 20x squared is equal to 320. And although we said that this video is on solving word problems with linear equations, this actually ends up not being linear. But we do have the tools that we need in order to be able to solve this. So I'm going to get rid of this 20 by dividing, because if I isolate this x squared, it'll make my life a whole lot easier. And 20 divided by 20 is 1. So I end up getting x squared is equal to 320 divided by 20 is 16. Now I can get rid of this square by square rooting. And the square root of x squared is x, and the square root of 16 is just 4. So now I know what x is. X is equal to 4. Awesome. But this isn't my final answer. We have to make sure that we go through and we answer the question. And the question is asking us to figure out the dimensions of the outside rectangle. So to figure that out, we know that one dimension is equal to 7x. So every time I see an x, I'm going to replace it with 4. So it's 7 times 4, which is equal to 28. And our unit is centimeters. And then our second dimension is this 3x here. So I'm going to do 3x, or 3 times 4. And we know that 3 times 4 is equal to 12, and it's 12 centimeters. Now let's see, does this answer make sense? I want to know if this answer is a correct answer. So it does make sense to have a dimension of 28 here, and a dimension of 12 here. And we know that this has a dimension of 4 because x is just equal to 4. So the area of the outside rectangle would be 28 times 12. And when I multiply those two together, I end up getting 336. And the area of my inside square is 4 by 4, which is 16. And I need to subtract these two values. And when I subtract these two values, I get 320 centimeters squared. So I did this correctly. Awesome. So we can say, therefore, the dimensions of the outside rectangle are 28 centimeters by 12 centimeters. And that's it for this question, as well as this video. If you have any questions, please let us know in the comments below or at lulumath.com, where you can also find blank or completed notes for this video. If you found this video to be useful, please make sure to subscribe and please share with others. Thank you, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.